the sun wakes up, I drown in my coffee cup, and I try to keep the storm.
Welcome back, kids. August 22nd. I was just rehearsing the set that I'm going to play on Saturday night at this little punk rock music venue downtown LA called Ham and Eggs. And right when I got done playing through it, I'm timing it. It's about 26 minutes. See, my set has a 30-minute time allotment, and the last thing I want to do is time it out to exactly 30 minutes, because then if anything goes wrong, if a chord doesn't work, or if I break a string, or if anything happens, then I'm going to screw whoever the performer is after me, who happens to be a friend of mine, so I don't want to do that. So my set, I've timed it at about 26 minutes. That way I've got 3, 4, 5 minutes, and if anything goes wrong, I'm fine, and I'm not going to be the jerk that postpones the next set into the later evening. Big problem with shows that have 4 or 5 bands playing. Because if the opener starts late and then plays their full set, the whole show's behind. And then if the second act plays a little late, then by the time the actual headliner goes on, let's say they're supposed to go on at 11, they may go on, and this has happened to me many times as a headliner. You go on at 1 in the morning. It's terrible. So out of respect, I'm timing my set. I'd had to take out a song I wanted to play, but that's fine, because I'd rather be under my time than over. So I'm playing it safe at 26 minutes. And I say all this to say, by the way, how are you? Hello. Yes. 2 videos in 2 days. Don't get used to it. But I just finished playing the set, and I was laughing at these songs because the lyrics to the songs, to me, are great. Like, they tell these stories, and they're basically almost all true stories that have really happened to me. You know, some of them you have to kind of change or add or subtract things, like if you're writing a song and you don't want someone to know that it's directly about them, you might not want to say their name in it. I'm just making up examples. So there's little tweaks and changes, or maybe you add a bit of fantasy to it, or romance, or whatever. But for the most part, they're true. And I was thinking, one of the responses I get when I co-write songs with people is they'll play a riff or whatever, and I'll write some lyrics real quick and sing them. They'll go, "Holy shit, how did you do that? Like, I just watched you write in 2 minutes?" And it makes me smile because what they don't know, and what I now understand, is that living a life of complete wild adventure, chaos, and madness, even though it was hard at the time, because you have to remember, you're encountering me on YouTube many, many decades into my life. The first half of it was nuts. The first 75% was nuts, chaos. You know, lots of drugs, lots of booze, lots of jails, I was in mental institutions. People wouldn't believe me now, but I have this huge database of experiences that I can now draw from to write blog posts, tell stories, and write songs with. And it turns out to be the best investment I ever made, was living a chaotic lifestyle for the first 75% of my life. And it could have continued. Because for a guy like me, I'm not too concerned with, at this point, I'm not too concerned about how I would appear on a job application. Well, you didn't graduate high school? No, I quit. Why? Didn't want to do it. Didn't go to college? No. Why? Didn't have any point. I just wanted to drink booze, do drugs, meet girls, play music, and, maybe drive my car off a cliff at some point or get hit by a truck or something. That was my real life plan. And while that doesn't go very well for a job application, it is fantastic if you want to write a book. Boring people can't write a book about their lives. Boring people have to make up, let me not say boring, traditionally mainstream people who follow all the rules, stay out of trouble, never get arrested. Their writing is going to be limited because their experiences are limited. Not to say they can't write great stuff. I'm saying if you live a crazy, chaotic life, one of the benefits that you won't reap until later is that you'll have all of those experiences to draw upon when you do want to do something creative. If you want to paint, sing, write songs, write a movie, write a book, have a blog, write articles, whatever you want to do, play the piano, you're going to have this wealth, and that's what it is. It is a wealth, a database of amazing stories, crazy stories, sadness, darkness, dark times, horrible situations, abuse, addictions, getting beat up, getting run over by cars. Come on. I did all these. But you won't see it at the time. And it's kind of an interesting thing. So as your big brother, maybe I wish someone would have told me at the time that I was going through all this, like, you're doing okay. Even though things are crazy and you're not succeeding at what you want to succeed in, and you got into a fight last night, or you crashed your car, or you got arrested, or you couldn't pay a bill, or your wife left you, or your girlfriend dumped you, or your boyfriend dumped you and broke your heart. This is all fine, because you, as a creative person, will someday draw upon all of these things to craft whatever, artwork or message or story you want to write. And it's actually a benefit. There's a funny thing that I say all the time, and it's simple. It's like, if you've never been to jail, I don't want to hear your music. If you've never been arrested, I don't want to hear your music. I don't want to hear it. All my favorite musicians were arrested at least once. I posted something on Instagram the other day, and it had all the greats. It was like Kurt Cobain, Johnny Cash, Jimi Hendrix, Elvis, just everyone across the gamut that's respected as like these historic, incredible musicians, these artists. All of them had a mugshot, and it seems like, I'm not saying you have to get arrested to be a good musician, but it sure does seem to help, because it's an indicator that you're really living that life of an artist. You're really not conforming. You're really causing trouble out there in the world. You're getting picked up. If Johnny Cash had never been arrested in his life, if you're going to sing outlaw music, the best way to do that is to be an outlaw, right? Anything else, you're kind of a fraud. There have been artists that have run into trouble, like Rick Ross, the quote-unquote gangster rapper, was busted that he was actually a correctional facility officer, I believe. And he was out talking about how he's about this life, and then the photos were shown, and it kind of exposed his story. And to his success, like for him, I'm not saying it's bad. He actually beat it. The music was good enough, and his new persona was good enough that no one seemed to care. And he just continued making millions upon millions of dollars. So it can be done. But I'm just saying, for me personally, if you've never been arrested, I don't want to read your book. If your book doesn't include some dark period, like, I don't know if anybody wants to hear a song or read a book about a person, male or female, who was born into a wealthy family, went to a Ivy League college, came out and their dad gave them a bunch of money, and then they made a bunch of money with it. Like, to me, I like the ones that start off in the ghetto or a slum or a project. There's addiction, there's incarcerations, there's rehabs, there's mental institutions, and then at some point it all starts to come together, and boom, they invent the automobile, or something. Those are my favorite stories and my favorite songs. Most musicians, to be honest, I can't imagine why anyone would go into music unless they were struggling. If everything's going great for you, you're probably not going to choose the roll of the dice lottery game that the music industry is, because, as we all know, it doesn't matter if you're good or not. It depends on who you know, being at the right place at the right time, and having the right sound at the right time. It doesn't really matter if you're good or not, because I know some incredible artists who play to 0 people on street corners and in little bars, and they're much more musically talented and interesting than the superstars in the charts. But they're not commercial enough. Some of the best music that I know of is by people who are relatively unknown. And it's just kind of a unique thing. So it's a long way to say this. If you're struggling, if you're younger than I am, especially if you're before the age of 18, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. I probably got in trouble 100 times before I was 18. I mean, I had contact with the police. I was picked up drinking and driving many times before the age of 17. We vandalized things, we shoplifted, we did all this kind of crazy stuff, and there was no permanent consequence, no long-term consequence, because before you're 18, they can't really arrest you unless you really do something horrendous. And I'm not saying go out and rob banks. I'm saying, break a window, drink, try drugs, do whatever you want to do, because you can get away with it. Then, if your life spirals out of control and you need some sort of a lever to hang on to, maybe at the very least, you're going to have an interesting story to tell later. So if you're watching this and your life's in shambles, that's okay. Sucks right now, but in the future, you may become a fantastic storyteller. You may become a fantastic author. Maybe you'll have a YouTube channel and tell your life story, and 1 billion people will sign up and you can write a book and sell it to them. You never know. So sometimes those dark periods end up giving you the ability to just randomly pull lyrics or play songs and capture a certain emotion that other people don't have. In fact, I would say a terrible past, like a dark childhood, a dark past, or struggle, an addiction, rehabs, jails, whatever, kind of is a superpower if you use it in the right way. Because believe me, a lot of people never use it in the right way. They never have the turnaround where they take the bleak experience and then turn it into some beautiful thing. They just continue the bleak experience. I mean, I think 30s are probably just because in my case, around 34 is where I kind of said, okay, I've pushed it as far as I can go. Because the truth is, if you live this kind of life, the legal problems will start piling up. And in my case, by about 30-ish something, the legal problems had piled up to a point where it was time to stop. And it did. And by pulling out of it and looking back, I have this resource, this wealth of craziness to draw from. But that's the trick, is to not let it continue. If your life just continuously spirals out of control and you never use the story for anything good, I'm not saying that's going to do good for your life. You're probably not going to be a great author. You'll probably be a great heroin addict that dies in obscurity in a hotel somewhere, or a 75-year-old alcoholic who's still drinking himself to death in his lazy boy, with a hole in his liver. And it could be a very sad story. But if you've lived a tough existence, or at least even just crazy and chaotic, oh my goodness, you're going to write the best songs, the best books, the best blog posts, the best articles in the world. I mean, think of some of the most famous and well-remembered, the most timeless artists, even authors, poets like Edgar Allan Poe. I remember feeling a lot of comfort when I found out that he died sick, drunk, and I believe broke. It was the first time I went, I was about 24 when I read his stuff and kind of got to know his story. And I saw that he was, no, that happened much later. I first read his books when I was about 25. And then in my 30s, I read more about him and learned that he died in sickness, drunkenness, addiction, and poverty. And as sad as his story was, it kind of gave me the sense of relief, like, oh, so the great writers of our time, they were broke, sick, crazy, and tortured and troubled too. Oh, it was mind-blowing when you think about it. It's mind-blowing. Blew my mind anyway. You may be like, yeah, Malan, what are you talking about? But that's really the message I wanted to share, especially if you're in a dark time. Maybe not now. If you're young, keep going. Just be nuts. Figure it out. Have fun. But at some point, when you're ready to chill out, don't let your bleak past, your darkness, ruin your future. Use it as a trampoline to kind of jump into the next layer of life, which probably will be some sort of creative pursuit. Also, becoming a therapist or a counselor can be very good for people with tough pasts. I remember when I first cleaned up my life, I started speaking. A friend of mine took me to teenage rehabs that I had grown up in. I was now over the age of 30, and he took me to some of these teen rehab units. And it'd be 2 or 3 of us, and we would all talk for 15 minutes and try to help these kids, get their lives together. They were in this hospital, probably against their will, put in by their parents, and we would come in and try to help them get on track. And what happened was, he would speak first, none of them would listen. Then I would come up, and I would just list off everything that had happened to me real quick. In the first 2 minutes, I'd let them know that I grew up in institutions like this, that I was falling down in the streets, getting picked up by the police, and, childhood was crazy, and parents were, messed up. And boom, they latched in. Everyone paid attention. And afterwards, the next guy got up and spoke, and they didn't pay attention at all. Afterwards, we met with a bunch of the kids, and all of them came to me, and they said, "You're the only one we trust." I said, "Why is that?" I was, proud, like, okay. They said, "Because you've been through it. We trust that you're not lying when you say that X, Y, Z, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G happened." They said, "And that makes us trust you." And I thought, in my head, that's another benefit. If you've lived a life of craziness, you have a very unique and rare ability to touch younger kids who are currently going through that, who do not trust adults. Because look, man, I remember my childhood, and if you were over the age, if you were even 5 years older than me, I didn't really trust you. If you were 10 years older than me, I had nothing to do with you. I was terrified of you. You were a different kind of animal. If I was 10 and you were 20, no way in the world. If I was 15 and you were 25, do not talk to me. I don't trust you. But when you hear an adult say, "Yeah, I grew up in a place like this and X, Y, Z happened," it kind of makes you go, "Really? Did that really happen to you?" So that's another unique thing that no one can do. I remember sitting in mental places and rehabs and talking to doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists and these people, and they didn't reach me at all because they had never been through what I had been through. And you can tell. I was 14. I'm talking to a 40-year-old, 45-year-old doctor who went to medical school and became he has no understanding of what life for me was like. So everything he said just went in one ear and out the other. The people that inspired me were people who had been through it. When you start surrounding yourselves with people who have already been through that, it's like, oh, wow, I trust this guy. Why? Because he used to be homeless. He's more qualified to help a troubled kid or a troubled 20-something or a troubled 30-something than a psychiatrist or a shrink or a doctor or a medical professional. They have nothing to offer, in my opinion, unless they've been through it. Sure does seem to help. But so that's it. I'm rambling. I guess the real message is a dark past can create a very creative future. So don't let it get you down. Use it. Use it the right way. Right now, I'm using it to write music and to write blog posts. You go back through and read my blog. I told some pretty crazy stories there. And that's one of the reasons people stuck around. So if you're struggling, you're going through it, just keep in mind, someday, maybe today, you could start. You can use that to do something remarkable. And why not? It's almost like alchemy. You can become an alchemist of your own life. You can take this dark, terrible past and transform it into something incredible. It can be done. Life alchemy is real. And I hope that helps. Hell, it helps me just to hear myself say it. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're doing well today. As always, I'll see you in the future.
And they said it go away with age unknown. It stayed, and it looks like another